panelists on stage. First, Ms. Bonny Berger, Commercial Counsellor and Senior Trade Commissioner at the Embassy of Canada. Bonny, please. Is Adina here? Adina Enden?
Yes.
Adina Enden, former CEO of Digital, please. Mr. Eliaz Lavi, Vice President at Marvell and CEO of Marvell Israel. And Mr. Javier de Viedma, the Deputy Head of Mission at the Embassy of Spain. Moderating this panel will be Professor Itamar Rabinovich. Professor Rabinovich can be introduced by many titles, so I asked Professor Rabinovich's permission to use just a few of them. Professor Rabinovich is the 6th president of the Tel Aviv University. He was the ambassador of Israel in the United States and also the chief negotiator with Syria. Professor Rabinovich will moderate this panel and later on will deliver his own presentation. So please stay tuned, Professor Rabinovich.
Thank you very much. We have a panel composed of two foreign diplomats stationed in Israel and two Israelis who have a lot of domestic and international experience in the high-tech industry. And they are here to prepare you for some of the challenges you may meet in Barcelona 8. I was pleasantly surprised to find out that we are ranked at number 30. I would have thought lower than that, given the sustained effort to delegitimize Israel, hostile media coverage, and so forth, as we all know too well. But you are quite likely to encounter hostile or critical questions. It used to be said that high-tech is apolitical or immune to politics. It is not, as we have discovered. And we thought that the best way to get the panel going is to ask each of the panelists to give you 3 pieces of advice in anticipation of the meeting from their experience, their observation, their understanding and perception of what a gathering like that could be and what you may encounter by way of, say, the environment in that conference. And why don't we begin sort of clockwise or anti-clockwise with the Canadian diplomat, Ms. Bonny Berger, please.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I come from the safe, fun, and friendly country that we all heard about. We would prefer that you thought of us as Canada, cool, connected, and innovative. I'm sorry, innovative doesn't have a C. I guess one of the points of advice is probably a basic one in terms of the culture and the culture of doing business with Canada. And although most of you don't sort of look a little bit farther north from the United States, Canada is extremely well known for a lot of its IT industry, including, I'm sure every one of you has one of these, right? Right? That came from Canada. Research in motion. There are. And you make a very good point that the innovation, we're looking for innovation collaboration. And that's a very good point, that this thing has pieces from all over the place. And in fact, the representatives, the local people from Research in Motion are setting up an incubator here in Israel. And the other thing I'm going to do before I go on with my pieces of advice, before I forget, is I'm going to tell you that to be cool and connected, you need to connect with Canada in Barcelona. We happen to have a breakfast meeting with Research in Motion and Rogers. You have to get invited. And so to be invited to that, it's on Tuesday, February the 15th Jessica Naklis in our office is here, and I really do suggest that you talk to her. But anyway, getting back to doing business with Canadians. Canadians, you think we're all really nice and we're really laid back, and we are, but we do have a few things that we might consider do's and don'ts with doing business with Canadians. And one of those is commitment. When somebody tells us that we're going to meet at a certain time, we believe that you're actually going to show up. And so even in Barcelona, when you're going to have shiny objects going back and forth all over the place, and you have a meeting with the Canadian, and it could be someone pretty important in one of these organizations. I think, what is it, 30,000? We have 30,000 IT companies, and there'll be a big whack of those represented. So one of the things that the Middle East in general has a reputation for, and certainly Israel, is this business of making an appointment and finding something else that's a little more interesting and maybe not showing up, or thinking it's more interesting. So, you know, it's a basic thing. The other thing is the business cards. How many of you do business in Asia? What do you do with the business card? You look at it, right? Yeah, and you don't write on it. With Canadians, it's kind of the same thing. We like somebody to pay attention to our business card when we hand it over, not shove it in your pocket. And these are such basic things, but Canadians are all about formality and politeness and so forth. And so that's really respected when we do business with other countries. And one of the reasons that we love doing business with the United States is not only because it's our neighbor, but we have the same kinds of culture, and so the way that we talk to each other and address each other by the first name, the last name at the beginning, all those kinds of things don't seem important, but they are. Canada recognizes the innovative, high-tech, fast-paced nature of Israel, but also Canadians are slightly risk-averse in some ways, and they want to make sure they can trust their business partner. And so all those little niceties around politeness and being on time and letting somebody know if a person can't be at the appointment, those things are important. Now, you guys are probably going to talk about things that are far more deep, and I'll get back to that if I get another chance, but I'm going to let my colleagues here maybe talk about some of their pieces of advice.
Okay. Hi, so first I would like to present myself. My experience is not only with Divitel. I've been one of the first employees of Converse Technology, and I've been with Converse Technology about 15 years, and I've also lived in the US for several years. So I had a lot of experience with US companies, and afterwards I worked in a French company, which was a completely different experience, a company of Dassault Systems. And I worked a lot with Asia Pacific and with also with Europe and the US. And I want to share a little of my experience with both of them. So first with the US, I think one of the things that we really usually don't talk about enough, it's about being personal. The US people really appreciate a lot the personal thing. I think if you invite one of your people to your house, for example, Friday evening to a family dinner, it's something that really buy you the world in the US, and they really like it, and it's perceived in the US, maybe because it's so uncommon, really getting personal, speaking about the family, showing your kids. I think it's something that it's highly appreciated, and many times we as Israeli don't feel so comfortable to do it, but it's very much appreciated. And even though they are very formal, they still appreciate the personal touch. And I think we shouldn't forget it. It's very, very important. And another thing is really talk about our hobbies. A lot of the people in the US like sports. I personally participate in running, marathon, triathlons, bicycle, a lot of stuff. And I think that's really something you can have in common, and you'll be surprised how many of them like it. And in one of the companies that I'm today in the board, we invited the US representative to come here to join the Tel Aviv marathon that is happening very soon. And they were very happy to come. We are going to prepare shirts with the company. And this is one way that you can, invite your customers, invite your people you are in relation with, and really create something in common which will be unforgettable. And then you can take pictures and put them in Facebook. I think the whole issue of social network, which for us is Israeli, is very common. It's not used enough in our relationship with people outside. And I can tell you in the US and in Europe, it's highly appreciated. So I think many times we are trying too much to be like, if we are in the US, really to learn the US joke, the football games, and everything which is local. And we have to be ourselves and really share our hobbies and our interests, which are very common, because at the end of the day, they are all people with families, with hobbies, and this is something that can connect with people a lot. And I want to tell you, and this happened also in the US and also in Europe, I can tell you that with France, that it's known as not easy to deal with. Still, I can tell you that this thing that you do in person, things that you do, for example, we did some community work that we did in a smart team, and we shared with the Dassault system, and they liked it a lot. And actually, due to this, they made a very nice business. If we'll have time, I'll go into more detail, but we do some work with the schools over here, where we shared with the schools, high school children came to our offices, and we shared the software that were developed at the Dassault system, and they used it, and Dassault liked it so much, they started a similar project in Paris with the high school over there, and they got a lot of feedback, and actually it fitted a lot their vision that they wanted people to start to use. They want to have this software over there, be on the internet, so everyone can download the software and use it, and to make it really something which is not only for businesses, but for people. And this came from our idea here in Israel, from a community project that we did together. So I think this kind of stuff is really very, very appreciated. And even because of the formality that you think that is on the other side, when we come and present ourselves, it's something which is very nice. And another, again, funny things about the French people, when they came here the first time, they were certain that they should, it will be a very bad week regarding food, because, you know, France is well known for the good food, and they didn't expect it to find such good restaurants in Israel. And actually, they were surprised from the kind of restaurants that we have here, very, very good food. And they liked it, and we took them to restaurants, and I can tell you that after the first time, they were all wanting to come here again and again. We were sending recipes, and even in the food, we are nothing to be ashamed of, Israeli versus French. So I think that being ourselves and really putting the impact on things that we have here, not only the politics, because we are not going in the street and fighting all day, but we have a lot of nice things. It's something that I think we can use a lot in our relationship with the foreign, with European and with the US.
And with the Canadian.
And with the Canadian, of course. Canadian is the best
We're a
on
little
this.
farther north.
Yes, I know, we've been there also a lot.
Thank you. Do you hear me at the end? Okay, so maybe I will start introducing myself. I'm not sure that many of you are familiar with Marvell, though I take the blame on myself. Marvell is the biggest fabless company in Israel, consists of about 1,200 employees working in Petach Tikva and Yokneam. We are a semiconductor company, but we see ourselves providing a total solution to our customer, which includes system know-how and software as well. And we are focused on three main domains here in Israel. The first one is cellular, switching is the second one, and system controllers and SoC is the third one. We are servicing two business units. Our headquarters resides in Silicon Valley, and we are about 20% of the total headcount of the company in Israel. And I think that doesn't have any precedence in Israel. If you look at a multi-international company where the founders are not Israelis, to see 20% of the workforce in Israel is quite unique. The other thing which is interesting about Marvell is that it consists of multiple acquisitions. So I personally have a lot of experience being acquired. I was one of the founders of Galileo Technology, and later on I've been acquired by Marvell, and then due to our performance and success, we moved and acquired Radlan Technology. Later on, a division from Intel, who brought us into the cellular space. And finally, we acquired a small company called Yamba, who brought us in the fiber optic technology. So as I said, altogether 1,200 employees in Israel. We consider ourselves R&D center. And frankly, when I know that the scope of this particular forum is to discuss what we are going to do tomorrow when we attend this big convention in Barcelona. I personally have a different view. I think that maybe if we need to do something now, it's a little bit too late. I think that we need to look at these particular opportunities along the year, prepare for them, understand what's happening in the world, understand that there is a big change in the world. The markets are changing. If in the past it used to be, the common notion was that in the Far East we do production, manufacturing. Today I can tell you for sure that development, strong development, very sophisticated one, is done in the Far East as well. I can tell you and share with you that my CEO, who his origin is from Indonesia, and he founded this company together with his brother and his spouse, who is from Shanghai. They request to interview each and every employee we hire in Israel, and standard he set for ourselves is that it needs to be a PhD and 4.0 GPA. Okay, that's the standard. Now let's go and deal with it, right? So we know that in Israel, with the, I think we have a great academy, but I think that there is a lot of things that we need to improve and strengthen our relationship, namely industry and academy. I think that we cannot allow ourselves anymore to work on an individual basis. We need to find ways to cooperate together, and I refer to Israeli companies to come prepare and put some agenda together where we can use our common strength and wisdom and, close gaps and show stronger where we show up, because the world is much more aggressive than it used to be. The other thing is, when it comes to culture, I think we Israelis, we are kind of chafifniks. We think that we can deal with any problem. As a matter of fact, when dealing with different cultures, most of us are used to deal with Western cultures. And frankly, I don't think that we deal with Western culture effectively and properly. I think we need to learn a lot. Not to say when we deal with Far East cultures. I think we should be more humble, take experts to teach us, to train our people how to deal with these cultures. Not be judgmental, take the time to learn, to practice, accommodate differences, while not giving up about, on substance. What's our strengths, and understand what is our strengths, etc. So, I don't have tricks how to approach such a big event. I think it's ongoing work that we need to do and we need to put our mind share to this direction along the year, understand that we don't know everything, understand that we need to drive for change. I don't think that what we used to do so far will hold for long. I know that we pat ourselves on the shoulder all the time, saying that we are very innovative, very creative, we are the smartest people in the world, blah, blah. But that's, I don't believe in it. I think that if you look at the amount of Chinese graduating and having PhDs, some of them have some, you know, Jewish genes as well. So if you look at statistics, this can be a big threat. So I think I suggest to be more humble, take the time and see what changes we need to do in order to cope with this situation.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm honored to be here today. I'll try to speak about myself, but just a very little, and I hope you understand why I'm doing this. I'm a diplomat. I work at the Spanish Embassy. I've been here for 6 months now, so I really don't know very much about Israel. My first posting was 20 years ago in Kuwait, right after the war, okay? Which is a very interesting country. It's the Middle Eastern culture, and also at the same time a country that was invaded, but at the same time was capable of delivering $3,000 every month to each of its citizens around the world. So it's a huge currency account. It's a very interesting thing. Then I moved to Chile, which is probably the best case of a Latin America successful experience of a country that went from being, you know, a backward country in a dictatorship to a modern, developed country. Then I went back to Spain and went to the United Nations in New York, where I learned the importance of consensus and of understanding the other's position. From then I moved to Lima, Peru, where I was Consul General, and I had to deal with thousands of people. This was probably, although I worked for the government, the closer work I have had to a private company, because we had more than 300,000 people per year coming into the consulate with huge problems of delay, 4 months, 3 months before you got a visa, lots of pressure. And there I learned the importance of technologies and IT to solve all these problems. Unfortunately, I think we did good job and reduce all the time, waiting times, etc. Besides that, I'm crazy about mobiles, and I'm one of the people that, one of the responsibles, as Joseph said, of this crazy pressure on the companies, because I've checked before I came here, and I have 235 apps in my iPhone, and I must say I've paid for just 3 of them probably. But anyway, I think this is a fascinating world, and it is the possibilities of this are extremely potential. Now, we are talking about branding a country or branding a company. And I would like also to talk about cliche. I see branding is what you want others to think about you, and cliche is what probably others brand you, you know, and think about you, no matter what you do, you know. When I lived in Kuwait, by the way, we're at IBM, there was what the foreigners, mainly the Westerners, would say about the Kuwaitis is they have the IBM system, which meant Inshallah Bukra Malish, which for those of you who don't speak Arabic means God willing, tomorrow, no problem. So basically it meant it will never be done. This, which is probably unfair for the Kuwaitis, is a way of branding. We were branding, we were putting a cliche on them, and this would mean no efficiency, laziness, delay. And I insist this was probably not exactly true, but it's what we used to say. And going beyond the cliche is very difficult for foreigners. Now, talking about Israel and my 6 months here, with all humility, there was I read the little paper that Yael made on this meeting. Is there a gap between what you think about Israel before you come and what you really see? Yes, there is a gap. How big is that gap? Huge. To be quite frank, I think of Israel as a friend country, and I like Israel a lot. But the image of Israel is not exactly what it is, what you find when you come here. I myself had a better image of what is the average in Spain or among foreigners. I knew it was much better, and I, of course, knew that the bombs were not coming down and things were, as just some people, some friends of you who are basically ignorance think. But then when you come, it's much, much better. So the ambassador or ex-ambassador here said, give us some pieces of advice. I really don't feel I have the knowledge or the seniority to give you pieces of advice, but maybe some ideas would help. The first thing that I would do is invite foreigners to come. Just let them come in. Don't try to lead them. Don't try to tell them what they have to think. They are intelligent enough. They're clever enough. There are lots of museums. There are lots of places. You can practically move all over the country in liberty, and let them think by themselves. They will see critical things, and they will see bad things. But definitely, you will gain a lot as Israelis by bringing them in and letting them think what this country is, because it speaks by itself. Another thing that I would try to, and this is, I know, a very difficult subject, and I don't want to go into politics or anything, but for many people, Israel is conflict. It doesn't mean that Israel is the bad guy, not necessarily, but it's a place where there are conflicts. It's the Middle East, and there is going to be a lot of problems. Okay, help to solve the conflict. Do as much as you can to bring peace. If you do so, I mean, if you have managed to do what you have managed to do with all these difficulties, we all know, I mean, you know much better than me the history of Israel. I cannot even think what Israel would be when there is peace. It would be just boosting, and it would be incredible, So, so I would help to do that, and not only to, I mean, basically to the private sector. There are lots of things to do. There are lots of bridges to build. And of course, I don't want to know into the origins and the reasons and etc. But I think that should be a name in itself. And well, talking about my country, I understand that I have to deliver some sort of farewell speech or bon voyage speech. I will be more specific about that. But you're going to go to a very beautiful city. You will know it. Most of you have already been there. But also, please try to make some businesses. There are lots of opportunities there. And I won't speak more because I think I've spoken enough.
Thank you for this opening round. Let us go directly to you. If you have any questions to the panelists, either to the two diplomats, maybe a little bit in the spirit of what the DCM in the Spanish Embassy has just shared with us in a very polite way, but we know that there are sometimes negative perceptions, there is criticism, it may interfere with the conduct of business. If you want to explore this a bit further, or if you want to bask in the more positive aspects, feel free, but you can direct questions to any of the four panelists. I myself will speak to you separately later about the more political issues, questions that you're likely to encounter. So please go ahead if you have any questions or comments. Yes, please.
You're talking about the gap between Israel before you arrived and after you arrived. Can you just elaborate? Was it mostly the politics was more dominant in your perception of Israel?
Not necessarily the politics. First of all, most of the people who don't know Israel tend to think of Israel in a very simplistic way. This is a highly complex society. It's a small country, and in a way it's very homogeneous because it's a Jewish, democratic state, etc. Okay, but people tend to think that everybody is going to be racially similar. And it reminds me of New York. When you walk in the streets of Tel Aviv, you see all kinds of races. Then you see the 22nd century in places like this one, and then you go back to the Middle Ages in some areas in which you see people who dress in a fancy way for us, for foreigners. There is, for instance, this gay-friendly thing is something you wouldn't expect. I knew about it, but you know, it's real. It's very modern. It's very westernized, if you want so. So this is something that most of the people don't know. And I think that there is a lot of work to do on that side. Of course, technology and communications is one of the areas in which Israel is more respected. Defense is another one. I mean, even people who don't have maybe a good opinion about Israel respect very much the army here, the capabilities and the technologies of Israel. But there is always a gap. I don't like the cliche about Spanish tapas, paellas, and flamenco. No, I mean, bullfighting and all that. I like those things, but I think Spain is much more than that. And there was, and we are visited by more than 50 to 60 million people every year. So we're supposed to be well known, but the cliche is still there. And we've discussed a lot about branding the country, etc. There is the everyday work, the everyday life, the every effort that you see the country is gaining more and more respect and is gaining more reliability. And this is what Israel is doing. But someone has to tell the people outside the world. And there is no better way than telling them, come here and see by yourself.
Can I add something?
Sure, go ahead.
From the Canadian perspective. Can I just say, I guess I'm the only one that didn't give my CV when I sat down here, but just so that you know what I do, because I don't know how many of you know what we even do at the Canadian Embassy or at the Spanish Embassy or at any other embassy. I think you might think that we run around helping our citizens who get into trouble or we issue visas, things like that. I just want to tell you that the Canadian Trade Commissioner Service that I represent is part of Foreign Affairs and International Trade. We do it together. You guys have Moital and Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We do it together because we believe that the economy part is as important as the political part. But I think a gap that we have, you probably know that Canada has a pretty large Jewish philanthropical community. What we find, you know the Israeli towers, you know that guy is Canadian, right? Maybe you didn't know that, okay? Anyway, and you'll see a lot of that all over the place. But we have a great political relationship, if I may say, between Canada and Israel. I think Canada's known, particularly recently, as a very big friend of Israel. On the political front, what we don't have is anywhere near the exploitation of the business possibilities that we could have. And so one of the things, I've only been here 4 months, so you have a lot more experience than I do. And one of the things that struck me as a trade commissioner trying to promote Canadian connections was the fact that so many philanthropists from Canada who are Jewish come here, dump some money in a project, and then aren't terribly interested in doing anything, two-way. And so I think that it's important if, in fact, Israel and Israelis and the Israeli high-tech industry, as well as others, are interested in doing some work with Canada on the innovation side and the partnership side. I mean, Canada has been listed this year and a few other years as the best place to do business in the G7, and I think you're probably aware of that. So I find that there's a big knowledge gap on both sides, and so we not only promote the advantages of Canada to the Israelis, but let me tell you that we're beating down the doors to talk to Canadians about the advantages of doing business with Israelis. And I think it's a good point. Some people think of Israel as a conflict zone, but we find many of our Canadians don't. They're thinking about the business aspect of it. And even with what's going on right now, it's interesting that Israel right now is a little island, isn't it? We have lots of people thinking about what's going on in the neighboring areas, but the Canadians are still getting on planes to come and do more with Israelis. So I think that, that's what struck me. Not as much business happening as could be, even though we're so close to the United States and even though Israel does so much business with Americans.
Thank you. Please.
Okay, the economic situation is bad. I won't hide it. But you won't see everybody begging on the streets and playing guitars to get some coins. I don't expect that bad. Spain had some structural strengths towards the crisis, especially in the financial section. Our banks in general are healthy, and we had regulations from the previous crisis in the 80s in which we took some measures that that helped through the crisis. For that reason, maybe some people thought that it was not going to affect us. But on the other hand, we have some structural faults. Like we depend too much on building and construction. We don't export enough. We are not competitive. We have not been competitive enough. We have too much unemployment, etc., etc. So it has hit badly. Now, the government has taken very, very serious matters, and we are going through this. They are changing the financial, because in the financial section, the banks are healthy, but there are the cajas, which is like, I don't know, the savings
Saving and Loan Association.
Yeah, that's the specific, which are, they started as being some, not really banks, they have to do some charities, etc. And those are not very healthy, but we are dealing with that. We're changing the labor laws to make it more flexible. And things are being done. And recently, the German Chancellor has been to Spain and has, congratulated, and we're doing a big effort. But the crisis is very bad, and we don't know how long it is going to last. That's why events like what is happening in Barcelona are so important to us, because we have made an important investment in the latest years in AI research and development. And Catalonia, which is the region where Barcelona is one of the most competitive and one of the regions that has done more in this aspect. So I encourage you to find partners and try to do some businesses. In fact, I talked to them, and they are planning to bring a businessmen, business people legation here at the end of this year, which wants to be quite important. They want to come to Israel, and that was very interesting. We've heard about Israel, we're much interested, we should do something, and there is this idea. So if you do some contacts, it would be important that, in a few months they can come back and you can arrange things.
There's another delegation of business people from Catalonia coming at the end of May.
Well, I wasn't aware of that, yeah.
We're running out of time here, but with your permission, one last question to all three diplomats on the stage. We high-tech people who travel around the world have this feeling that we don't only represent the Israeli high-tech, but we also represent the state of Israel. So when you look at us, either as a former Israeli diplomat who's been in that profession for quite some time, and you as diplomats today, is this part of our role? Would you expect Israeli high-tech people to answer questions about Israel, or would you say that a polite dismissal would be good enough? I'm not representing the state of Israel. Let's talk about my great, unbelievable high-tech company and do with that. What do you think?
You are the ambassador for your country. Every single Israeli who travels abroad is an ambassador for his or her country. And that is why... Well, it's true. It's like I'm an ambassador with the ambassador, who, by the way, sends his regards. You are representing the whole country is going to be judged by the way that you comport yourself, by the activities that you do, by the way that you represent it. And so I think, that's a good point to raise, and I think that it's interesting to think of yourself as in that little microcosm to present to the world that's going to be at that particular Congress, because they're all people bleeding the same color as you, what is the Israel of 2011 and beyond. That's my opinion anyway.
Thank you.
Well, I certainly agree. This is a personal opinion. No matter what happens, I think you should never be ashamed of your own country and your own culture. Others will lose respect to you. This is basic. Now, that said, doesn't mean that you have to be an active fighter and and meddle into every possible fight you can have. Well, there's something like being sensitive to others. Others have different perspectives, different opinions. You can interchange. I personally, in this kind of meetings, don't think necessarily the politics have to be there. You might be asked, and people, but you will see that people will be much more open than what you expect, and they will maybe asking you to tell you the version of the things, and how is it, and how is everyday life in Israel, and how are you holding with this and that. And if you don't have like strong or aggressive opinions, you will have it won't be so difficult. By the way, there's something connected to this that I would like to stand, because I know some of you have been worried about this, the possibility that any courts go against some of the people who are going to Spain. Well, I think that my predecessor last year told you that it was solved, and I understand it is so. The government is very worried about this, and we have changed the law. And normally there shouldn't be any of this, lawsuits against Israelis just because of the fact. We all understand that this goes crazy and is affecting international relations. So I would like to give you some calming news on that side.
Thank you. The last question to Professor Rabinovich on that court, and you are going to have your full presentation just after the break, but give us a practical advice here. We are all going next week to Barcelona. Somebody walks up to us and says, okay, what do you think about this crisis in Egypt? The whole world knows that you have been supportive of Mubarak because of all kinds of reasons. What do we say? Do we avoid the conversation? One last answer and then we go out.
Yeah, the problem is not that Israel is supportive of Mubarak. Why should one not be supportive of one's friend and ally? I think the natural phenomenon or the expectation is that one should be loyal and supportive of one's friends. What happened in the past few weeks is that a dichotomy was created between stability and apparent democracy. Mubarak and his regime represent stability. They gave Egypt stability. Remember that Mubarak came in after the assassination of Sadat. There was a great fear that there would be anarchy in Egypt. Egypt is central to the region. It is still the most important Arab country, the largest, the most highly developed, the largest. In Egypt would spell anarchy for the region. So you do want to see stability in Egypt, but of course everybody wants to see freedom and democracy. The question is, does the wave that is currently sweeping the region leading necessarily to democracy? Not necessarily. In a country like Tunisia, possibly yes, where it all began, because Tunisia is a small, relatively small, 10 million people, compact, advanced, it has a civil society, and the wave that began in Tunisia toppled a dictatorship of Mr. Ben Ali, and it may yet happen that there will be a democratic government in Tunisia. This may not be the case in Egypt. In Egypt you have two powerful forces at work, the army or the Muslim Brotherhood. Now the army is the underpinning of the regime. If the regime falls for whatever reason, the most natural alternative to the regime that comes to mind is the Muslim Brotherhood, which certainly doesn't stand for a democracy or for a Western attitude or for support of the peace. There are indications that they won't. So Israelis are supportive of Mubarak. The rest of the world, United States, Canada, Western Europe, I think we're a bit hasty in demanding that Mubarak leave soon. And that may have been erroneous, because by just leaving soon, he could have thrown the country into anarchy. I think the fact that he announced that his son will not succeed him is an important step forward. It would have been alien to Egypt to introduce a dynastic principle into a Republican regime. The fact that he announced that he is not going to run again is again a positive step forward. And I think that we are now making slow progress towards a more orderly transition. We still do not know who will replace Mubarak, what kind of a regime will emerge from the ruins of his regime. But in that regard, things seem clearer this week than last week. So what Israel does not want to do and does not want to be seen is to be a country that is against democracy in Egypt or in the Arab world. But we've learned our lessons. We saw what happened in the Palestinian elections in 2006. Hamas won the elections, and look at Gaza. There is no democracy in Gaza. What we know is that you don't have to confuse democracy with elections. Elections are one component of democracy. In democracy, you need participation through elections. You need civil society, a middle class that is the backbone of democratic institutions. You need the rule of law. You need respect for individual rights. 8 or 10 components that together add up and can enable a democracy to take place. Spain, I think, underwent a very impressive transition from the dictatorship of Franco to a constitutional monarchy. There was one attempt at the setback a few years after the transition, but on the whole, it's a remarkable success story of transition from dictatorship to democracy. But Spain has most of the elements that I counted as requisites for a democracy at work. I'm not sure that Egypt or several of our other neighbors have, and we have to look at a much more gradual process. So this is not something that you can easily explain, certainly not in a 2-minute response to a casual comment in a cocktail or on another occasion, but it's important to find a way to express it cogently, clearly, and say, listen, it's a bit more complex than that. Unfortunately, in Egypt and in some of the other neighboring countries, democracy and stability are not on the same wave. The alternative to the current regimes is Islamist. We have yet to see a democratic Islamic regime. What we see in Iran is not an encouraging example. So let us all be a bit more patient before we expect the rule of democracy to take place in the Middle East.
Great. So if you're looking for something interesting to do next week, we are happy to take you with us. And I think we'll take a quick break, right?